4 spine-chilling real farm tales, revealed secrets of haunted pasts and sinister encounters. The Peterson family stumbled onto the worn path leading to an old, dilapidated farmhouse on the outskirts of Black River Falls, Wisconsin. Their breaths hung in the humid air, heavy with unease. Jenna, a determined mother in her late 30s, forced a smile as she stepped into the creaking structure, but dread clawed at her heart. They were just weeks away from losing their home, and this broken place was supposed to be their fresh start. The scent of rust and forgotten memories wafted through the air, mirroring the chaos of their lives. Inside, peeling wallpaper and cracked windows told tales of neglect. As Jenna unpacked boxes, Lily, her curious 12-year-old daughter, rushed from room to room, her laughter echoing like a faint bell against the sorrowful walls. Jake, 16, lingered in the background with a frown etched on his brow, skepticism licking at the edges of his mind. Shadows twisted in dim corners, making him feel like something watched from the depths of the wood-paneled walls. On their first night, the wind shrieked through the shutters, creating an eerie melody that filled the empty rooms. Lily jumped into Jenna's arms, claiming she heard whispers calling their names, chilling the very air around them. Jenna brushed it off, saying it was just her imagination, but Jake felt the malice lurking like a hungry wolf in the woods. Days passed, and strange occurrences took root. Farm tools inexplicably shifted in the shed. Objects vanished only to reappear in odd places. The lurking darkness twisted their perception of safety. One evening, while digging through the attic, they uncovered dusty photographs of a wealthy landowner and cryptic journals detailing betrayal and despair. The house felt more alive with every revelation, but as its history surfaced, so did the unease and tension in the air. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That stormy night, rain lashed against the windows as thunder rumbled threateningly overhead. A pulse of urgency surged through the house. The whispers grew louder, more demanding. Jenna's heart raced as fear trickled down her spine. Jake felt the cold grip of malevolence pushing him outside into the tempest. He stumbled into their neighbor, Joe, whose calm facade bore hidden secrets. Joe's stories of the land, wrapped in a layer of creepy legends, only deepened the uneasiness inside Jake's gut. Upon returning to the house, Jake couldn't shake off the feeling of encroaching darkness. Jenna, riddled with worry, felt the need to shield her kids from whatever haunted this place, from the legacy that clung to it like cobwebs. Just as the wind howled with ferocity, so did the whispering rise to agonizing screams. The lights flickered, then plunged them into suffocating darkness. Unseen forces rippled through the air, and shadows seemed to gather thickly around them. In that oppressive moment of despair, as palpable dread invaded every corner of the farmhouse, an ominous voice echoed, summoning them deeper into the chilling legacy of the past. Would they unravel the truth before it consumed them? Or would they dissolve into just another ghostly chapter within the farmhouse's haunted history? Jake's heart pounded in sync with the rumbling thunder outside. Shadows danced frantically across the walls, a flickering silhouette that sent chills racing down his spine. He looked at his mother, her eyes wide, reflecting the terror that filled the room. Lily squeezed her doll tightly, as if it could somehow protect her from the nightmares lurking just out of sight. "Mom, we have to get out of here." Jake's voice broke the silence, raw with urgency. "Where would we go?" Jenna's voice trembled as she took a step back, her feet instinctively moving toward the staircase, the only escape from the encroaching darkness. But the shadows felt alive, writhing like smoke, eager to suffocate any thought of safety. "I don't care, we can't stay." Jake pressed hard, frustration mingled with fear. Lily, overwhelmed, suddenly shouted, "Look, the attic door!" Jenna's gaze snapped toward the old wooden door. To her horror, it was ajar, creaking slowly, as if beckoning them to enter. A draft crawled to the house, carrying the scent of decay, making her stomach churn. A smirk of wickedness broke through Jake's cautious demeanor. Maybe there's something up there, like a clue. Ignoring the strong instincts that screamed at her to flee, Jenna shifted into protective mode. "We'll check it out, but we stick together." With every step toward the attic, the air thickened, chafing their lungs. Jake's pulse raced, the noise of the storm fading as they climbed the stairs into the dark. The moonlight offered just enough illumination to reveal the terror lurking in the corners. The dust swirled like spirits trapped in time. In the attic, old crates lay scattered, holding memories cloaked in cobwebs. The chill increased, wrapping around them like creeping vines. As they fanned away the dust, Jake's fingers found an old lantern, its surface cold and lifeless. Frantically, he struck a match, igniting the flame. Light cracked through the darkness, illuminating a series of portraits on the wall. They were faces from another time, their hollow eyes seeming to follow the family wherever they moved. A sinking feeling settled in Jake's stomach as he recognized one of the figures, the wealthy landowner from the photographs found days earlier. "Look at that one," he whispered, pointing. "That's the guy from the attic journals." As the flame flickered, the temperature dropped further. Shadows danced like frantic spirits, and the whispers amplifying into frantic shrieks clawed at their sanity. Suddenly, a gust of wind ripped through, extinguishing the lantern with a heart-stopping hiss. "Jake, get the match," Jenna urged, panic rising. But before he could respond, something unseen but palpable brushed past him, sending his heart racing and his instincts into overdrive. A voice, low and gravelly, resonated through the very walls. "You shouldn't have come here." Lily recoiled, pressing against her mother, who could only stare in horror as darkness enveloped them anew. The air grew thicker, tinged with a sense of impending doom. Jake tried desperately for the matchbox in his pocket, but it had slipped away in the chaos, lost to the abyss. With crawling dread, they were swallowed by a chilling silence, broken only by the scraping of nails against wood, slow, deliberate, and closing in. All hope seemed to slip away as shadows gathered, threatening to consume them whole. Would they piece together the malevolent truth of this cursed place before it was too late? Or would they become the next souls lost to the whispers of the land? Above the cacophony, a single thought echoed hauntingly in Jake's mind. If they stayed, they might never leave. In the suffocating grip of darkness, something stirred just beyond their reach. What awaited them once the lantern light reignited? Would they uncover the dark history lurking within the boards of the house, or would it be too late to break free? Jake's hands trembled, searching frantically through the darkness for anything, some scrap worth lighting. The scratching sound grew louder, and the thick air around them felt charged, electric with danger. It scratched its hollow message, demanding attention, as if it held the key to their survival. "Mom, I can't see. Where's the lantern?" His voice was barely a whisper, lost amid the rising chaos. Jenna's heart raced as she clasped Lily's delicate fingers. "Stay close. We need to find a way to light this place back up." The darkness clawed at her resolve. A cold whisper slithered past them, brushing their skin. "You're not alone here." It echoed off the walls, twisting and writhing like a serpent. Jake squinted, straining to glimpse his mother and sister through the dense veil of shadow. "We can't die here. We have to." "Shh," Jenna hissed, her eyes darting around. "Did you hear that?" Footsteps, or rather shuffles. Slow and uneven, they crept toward their hiding place, concealed by towering crates and decades of neglected memories. The night grew heavy, breaths became shallow. Jake's pulse thudded like thunder in his ears. The sudden flicker of a stray thought interrupted him. "Maybe," he started, but the rest of his idea flicked away, like the light betraying him. "Maybe what, Jake?" He could feel the weight of unseen eyes intent on them. "We need to draw it out. If we can find the truth behind these portraits, maybe—" A sobbing wail pierced the air, a soul-chilling sound that froze every bone in their bodies. Instinctively, Lily tightened her grip on her doll, squeezing her eyes shut, willing herself to become invisible. "Jake!" Jenna's voice trembled, but he could hear determination threading through even her fear. "We have to move, now!" With hearts racing, they edged toward the staircase. The shadows became a living entity, moving against them, whispers sharpening into shrieks of past victims. Jake's vision blurred, thoughts spiraling. Everything felt disorienting. But then, a flicker, a tiny flicker against the looming darkness. "Yes!" Jake cried out, spotting the matchbox he had dropped earlier, wedged in a crack between the floorboards. Jenna grabbed his arm, urgency pulsing through her veins. "Hurry!" With shaky breaths, he knelt down, fingering the matchbox like it was a lifeline. Just as he pulled it free, another shrill wail pierced the air, sending static crashing over their skin. "Please don't get lost in the dark," Lily whimpered, the courage of a child testing the weight of the night. He struck a match, the fire popping to life and daring to dance against the shadows. The dim light flickered, illuminating the haunting portraits once more. But this time, the faces were different. Twisted, gnarled down and haunted. "Jake, they look like they're in pain," Jenna gasped, flinching back. "It's the same landowner," he whispered, inching closer, the glow exposing deep hollows in their eyes and twisted expressions that screamed of untold horrors. But as the light settled, horror struck. Instead of fading back into the wall, one of the figures began to peel itself away from its frame. A woman with matted hair falling in wild tangles, her lips stretched into a silent scream. "Get back!" Jenna screamed. The figure seemed to hang between dimensions, pulling itself from the wall with ragged breaths. "We have to fight!" Jake yelled, feeling desperation grip him as the boundaries between them blurred. The woman's twisted face was contorted, yet her eyes held a flicker of something profoundly painful, a plea. And suddenly, it all clicked. She's trapped. We have to put her back." But the shadows lunged, writhed, and twisted, threatening to engulf them all. The temperature inside the attic plummeted further, and the light flickered. "Are we too late?" Jenna's voice cracked, the reality settling like lead in her stomach. The figure lunged, mouthing words they couldn't hear over the rising tempest. Panic clawed at their throats. "Put her back!" Jake shouted, but with growing horror he realized he wasn't sure how. As the portrait lady lunged further, capturing their every hope, darkness swirled and grew heavy. Would they discover how to free her without losing themselves? Would the chilling history of the house finally rise up to reveal its horrors? In that instant of dread, all felt lost. The night deepened, pushing against the edges of sanity itself. And just as all hope seemed to fade, the darkness pulsed again, promising something even more sinister lurking beyond. Something waiting. "Jake, look!" The shadows trembled in anticipation, and dread coiled around them tighter than before. What had they awakened? Without warning, the heavy darkness enveloped them, a thick shroud filled with the scent of decay. The woman's face contorted, her anguished expression a stark contrast to the flickering light that held her at bay. "Put her back before it's too late," She seemed to scream without words, a silent plea that echoed through the chilling night. Jake's heart raced. How do we put her back? He fumbled for words as the shadows seemed to beckon him, curling around his legs like icy tendrils. Reality felt distorted, as if time slowed, letting dread seethe into every moment. "Jake, think," Jenna urged, her voice thin, barely piercing through the thick fear. "What did we discover about these portraits? There must be something." The woman's figure lunged again, almost breaking free from the painted confines that had held her for so long. Desperate, Jake glanced around the attic, taking in the relics of failed hopes that littered the room, the echoes of time hanging heavy in the air. "The stories, in the letters," he blurted out suddenly, remembering the musty papers he'd combed through before all of this started. They might hold the answer they desperately needed. "The letters?" Jenna echoed, her eyes wide with understanding. "That's it. They were tied to these portraits. Maybe they explain how to send her back." But the shadows shifted, darkness creeping closer. The wailing grew, and it felt like the very walls of the attic were pressing in, a confining box filled with torment and despair. Every shiver ricocheted through their bones. "Lily!" he shouted, hoping to anchor his sister and quell her fear. "Stay close to Mom. Don't look away." He turned back to the writhing figure. "We'll help you. Just hold on." But as he stumbled into the room's clutter, a chill grasped his body. Something was off. The very air hummed with anger, as if the relics themselves resented their presence. The woman, eyes pleading still, gnashed her teeth, her mouth forming twisted shapes of utter agony, belying her struggle against the reality that contained her. "Shh," Jenna whispered, dragging Lily back against the wall. "We're almost there." Jake's fingers brushed against the edges of the letters. They were rotten, ink bleeding into the fragile paper, but desperation surged as he scanned the hastily scribbled words. Fragments of old tales melded with curses and warnings scrawled in hurried panic. The landowner, he didn't just trap her. It says here he fed off their fear. Jake's voice trembled as he pieced together the truth, a web of horror unfolding before them. He used them to sustain his life force. "No, no," Jenna exclaimed, layering dread across the room. "If we unleash her, we might bring him back too." The light flickered again, barely clinging to existence. The shadows pulsed with hunger, and the gnarled faces in the painting seemed to lean closer, yearning for the energy of the living. "We have to risk it," Jake shouted back. "If we don't do something now, she'll pull us in, and we'll vanish like the others." With a rush of adrenaline, he grabbed a handful of letters and pointed at the woman. "This is your chance to go back. You can be free if we figure this out." The shadows twisted violently, and the light flickered lower. Desperation clawing now at the back of Jake's mind as he read the words out loud. To banish the tormented soul, one must speak the truth in the face of sorrow. But as he began to recite the words of the spell, a guttural growl reverberated through the attic, drowning out his voice. The shadows surged, slashing through the tiny flame. "Jake!" Jenna screamed, the torment of the moment thrusting a painful dread into every syllable. As the flicker waned, it unveiled the full form of the woman, claws stretching, lips drawn back in a scream of darkness that seemed to erupt from centuries of anguish. "Help me!" she cried, her voice breaking through the night as it transformed, contorting into a primal roar that shattered the air and plunged them all into a vortex of chaos. The attic vibrated with monstrous energy, and all light was snuffed out in an instant. Then, silence. What lay dormant in the dark? What awaited them in this terrifying abyss? Would they find their way back, or had they truly awakened what should have remained asleep? The real nightmare was just beginning. Jake blinked, straining to see anything in the overpowering darkness. Panic clawed at his chest, and each shallow breath felt like a betrayal. Jenna? Lily? His voice wavered, swallowed by the oppressive silence. "Here," came a faint whisper from Jenna, the sound laced with barely contained terror. The darkness felt alive, pulsating around them, cold and suffocating. Jake reached out, arms wide, searching for a direction, for anything that felt like safety. "Stay together," he warned. There was a dim memory of the flickering light they had fought to preserve, but it now felt like a distant dream. And then a low, taunting laugh echoed around them, resonating through the attic like a malevolent heartbeat. Jake felt a jolt in his stomach, the familiar chill of dread. "This isn't just a ghost, is it?" His words spilled into the vast emptiness, each syllable tremoring with fierce claws. The laughter grew, wrapping around them, burrowing into their minds. No, she's not alone. It was the same haunting voice that called from his nightmares, a velvety whisper slathered in darkness. "You've awakened the curse." "What curse?" Jake shouted. In that moment, he felt the oppressive weight of something lurking, a truth that had only begun to unravel. "What do you want from us?" "Your fear, your anguish," the voice sang, lilting and sweet. "It feeds me." Jenna clutched Lily's hand tightly. "We can't let it win." But that thought felt fragile, a mere flicker again. The tide of despair crashing around them. Jake's throat constricted, the shadows expanded, and he could feel their breath hot and rancid. "Read," Lily said, her small voice piercing through the effect of dread. "The letters, maybe." Fumbling through the darkness, he clutched the handful of letters still crumpled in his palm. "Yes, they might hold the secret to stop this." Once again, he looked for the thin outline of Jenna and Lily, but found only the suffocating blackness. "Jenna, help me find the light." "Here," Jenna's voice responded, but it wavered, uncertain. Jake felt the weight of malicious eyes on him, opening wider as he ripped at the letters. With each tear, the darkness hissed menacingly. "We're losing them." He focused, squinting into the umbra, seeking one legible phrase, anything to anchor their reality. Finally, he saw a spark of ink. "The truth banishes the dark." "Wait," he shouted. "The truth? What truth?" "Speak it," Jenna urged, her voice trembling on a tightrope of fear. "Whatever it is." He inhaled, feeling the shadows choke him momentarily. "You were wronged," he cried into the void. "This isn't your prison." The laughter turned into a scream, reverberating through the attic. For a moment, the shadows seemed to pull back, as if recoiling against a bitter light. But the air thickened once more. "Not all truths can save you, boy, not all." The voice echoed back, a shadow's taunt deepening the despair. And then he saw them, the faces in the paintings around the room, their features twisted in agony, eyes pleading, horror etched into their expressions. They were not just remnants of another age, but living shards of torment, the very echoes of those trapped. "Change it," shouted Jenna, her voice now mixed with urgency. "We have to change their story, give them closure." Terror spiked. Jake's heart raced, adrenaline and fear racing through his veins. "We need their names. Who were they before this?" The shadows roared, ripping through the air. But Jake felt a rush of defiant energy. "I will save you," he yelled, feeling the truth surge within him, determined to defy the horror. "Say their names, speak to the cursed," echoed the darkness, and Jake screamed their names. He didn't know them, but he felt them. Their pain became his own, breaking through the chaos like light through a divided shroud. And with every name, the darkness shrieked louder, but the paintings grew clearer, the faces less haunted. A blinding flash of light erupted, sending shock waves through the attic. But just as fast, darkness gripped him again, twisting the air into dense fog. The echoes of souls in torment echoed louder, mixing with the growls of a greater malevolence awakening. "Jake!" came Jenna's voice, strained and frantic. Could they withstand the awakening storm?
Just how deep did the curse run, and were they truly prepared to face the blood of the past? As Jake felt the walls close in, a tremor of dread slithered through him. Were they the ones now becoming part of this hell? He had to know. But just then, the shadows erupted around them, swallowing all light, closing off any chance of escape. What would emerge from the void? Would their desperate truths hold the power to vanquish the dark, or summon forth something even more sinister? Jake stumbled backward, his heart pounding as the darkness twisted and coiled around him like a serpent. He could feel the expectant weight of the shadows pressing against his skin, crawling under his clothes, snaking up to his throat. "Jenna! Lily!" he screamed, the names tearing from his mouth in sheer panic. "Over here!" Jenna's voice sliced through the gloom, shaky but still grounded in determination. Jake lunged toward her voice, hands outstretched. But the dark seemed to pull back, almost mocking him, playing tricks on his senses. Each step echoed like thunder, sending waves of dread crashing over him. The laughter returned, a macabre melody that echoed off the walls, growing louder with every beat of his heart. "You think you can save them?" the voice taunted, dripping with malice. "You're not the first to try." "I don't care who came before," Jake shouted into the void, his voice ringing with reckless defiance. "I won't let you take them, not again." The laughter morphed into a cacophony, reverberating through the air. The faces from the paintings appeared once more in the corners of his vision, their eyes wide and pleading. They were watching, but he couldn't tell if they were allies or simply more victims of the curse. "Speak to us," one of the faces mouthed silently, its expression shifting from fear to desperation. Jake's skin prickled. "What do you mean?" he breathed, his throat tightening. "Names. Tell their names," came a faint whisper that seemed to emanate from the very walls. "Who?" he asked, bewildered by the sudden torrent of emotion flooding through him. There was a moment of silence, a fragile pause in the chaos. "Names have power," Jenna chimed in, her voice a thread of hope in the suffocating darkness. "We have to remember." Jake felt the tremors of their collective history radiating through the air, pulling at him. "Samuel, Isabel," he began, desperation spilling from his lips. He called upon the fragments of his memory, the fleeting moments they had spent in the attic before everything unfolded. Each name he spoke felt like an incantation. The laughter faltered, twisting into shrieks. The air thickened, rage flooding the room. "Foolish boy," the voice screeched, a tempest of fury swirling thick and choking. "Flesh and blood will be both witness and witness-bearer. There's no salvation here." The ground beneath their feet trembled, and dust cascaded from the rafters like rain. Jake grasped for Jenna and Lily, fingers brushing against hands, finding their way back together. The warmth of their skin offered a fleeting comfort against the disorienting encroaching shadows. "We need to dig deeper, Jake," Jenna urged, breathless and shaking. "What else do we?" "Need to know. What happened to them?" As if triggered by her words, memories surged forward in fragments, sharp and painful. "They were betrayed," Jake exclaimed, as if the weight of the truth was a weight off his chest. "Isabel was punished for something she didn't even do. She was wronged." With each word, the shadows recoiled. The paintings flickered, their colors brightening momentarily, as if responding to the truth being unwrapped. "Say it," Lily urged, her voice barely holding growing dread at bay. "That's it, Jake. It's the key." "Isabel," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "You were trapped. Samuel loved you. He wouldn't let you go." A deafening roar erupted, rattling the attic, as if the building itself battled against the dark, furious for every name spoken. Shadows twisted into thorns, wrapping around Jake's arms, pulling him apart. "This is madness!" it shrieked, rattling his bones. "You think this can save you?" But Jake had found resolve. "You are not their keeper," he screamed. "Your curse will fall." As if responding to his cry, light flared as names and truths stitched themselves together. "Isabel, Samuel, you are not forgotten!" Jake shouted, feeling their anguish wash through him, propelling him onward. But as the brightness grew, something sinister lurked at the edges of the light. A figure, horned and shadowy, formed from the depths of the void, its whispers slithering like ice down his spine. "You've only scratched the surface, boy. There's far more than you can fathom." Another surge of dread gripped him as the temperature dropped sharply. Was it victory, or had they merely painted an even darker target on their backs? What unseen horrors still awaited them? The walls trembled as the tension grew heavier, the shadows poised to strike once more. What monstrous truth still lay buried in this cursed attic, and could they truly fight against the darkness that called to them? The shadows surged forward, as if sensing Jake's resolve. The air thickened, coiling around him like a tightening noose. He closed his eyes, willing himself to remember. The voices of the lost echoed in his mind, urging him, pushing him to confront the truth buried deep within the darkness. "Isabel and Samuel, what else?" Jake whispered desperately, each word a path toward salvation. "Remember the lantern!" Jenna cried, her voice filled with urgency, breaking through the chaos. "The one in the story, it held their hope." Jake's pulse quickened. That lantern, that glowing guide, could light the way out. He saw it now, flickering in his memories, illuminating a path they had walked together, warm against the encroaching cold. "Isabel, the lantern! You carried it! Show us the way!" His shout cut through the shadowy laughter, casting a fragile light against the horror. The oppressive darkness collapsed around them, twisting in unexpected directions, as if struggling against the sparks of names and memories igniting within Jake's heart. A chill swept through the attic, swirling around him like an icy wind. He felt Jenna's hand gripped his tightly, fear mingling with a fragile hope. "Jake!" Lily's voice cracked, strained with desperation. "Find it! We need to find the lantern before it's too late!" With a newfound determination, Jake began to search the attic. He fumbled through the looming shadows, hands knocking over forgotten artifacts. Cobwebbed trunks, dusty books, forgotten whispers of the past. He gritted his teeth against the darkness that threatened to consume him, pushing onward. The laughter changed, becoming a low growl, an angry beast clawing at the edges of his sanity. "You think you can command what you do not understand?" it hissed, a serpent of contempt slithering into his ear. "No!" he bellowed, the word bursting forth like a flame. "You will not take me!" He felt the vibrations in the air, the power of forgotten names rising around him like a tempest. "Jenna, Lily," he urged, searching desperately. "Help me!" From a corner, Jenna pointed, her voice wavering but emboldened. "There, I see something." Through the swirling tendrils of black, a faint glow emerged. It flickered like a heartbeat, pulsing with the rhythm of hope. The lantern! Jake bolted toward it, each step shaking the darkness that clung to him. But the shadows shrieked, writhing in counterattack, clawing at him, desperate to hold him back. He could feel them pulling at his sanity, whispering his doubts, filling his heart with fear. "Hold fast!" Jenna shouted, squeezing his arm. Jake reached the lantern, clutched it tight. The moment he touched it, warmth washed over him, and light exploded from the glass, pushing the shadows away with a fierce intensity. The darkness howled, twisting and darting back as if burned by a scorching flame. "Isabel! Samuel!" Jake cried, feeling the power surge through him. "We are here for you, together!" Light burst forth, illuminating the attic, illuminating the faces of the trapped souls.
Their eyes glimmered with recognition, their mouths forming words he could almost hear. But the shadows recoiled, roaring in anguish. "Fools!" the voice thundered, echoing in pain. "This is just the beginning." Suddenly, darkness pooled again, but this time it was different. From it emerged silhouettes, larger and more menacing, forming an army of specters whose faces he could not recognize. Fear gripped Jake's chest, tightening like a vice. Had they truly awakened something worse? He glanced at Jenna and Lily, who shared his terror, their own breaths shallow and uneven. "Jake!" Jenna shouted over the din. "What comes next? What do we do?" He didn't know, couldn't think. But deep within the swirling chaos, the glow of the lantern pulsated against the fear. It was alive, as if sharing its strength. But would it be enough? As the shadows poured forward, he grasped the lantern tighter, feeling its warmth seep into him. Would it guide them through the dark, or would it lead them further into the abyss? "The light," Jake whispered, his heart racing. "Can it save us?" Before he could find an answer, a chilling roar enveloped them, shaking the very foundation of the attic. The whispers coalesced into a symphony of anguish, drowning out all hope. And then, from the mass of shadows, a familiar voice emerged, cutting through the darkness. "You dare disturb the resting?" Jake froze, recognition sparking like fire in his veins. It couldn't be. The history of the cursed attic was not yet fully told. What further horrors awaited him as the darkness continued to throb with uncharted fury? The shadows responded to the voice with a violent shudder, as if recoiling from something it both feared and revered. A figure emerged, coalescing out of the dark like smoke taking form. It was impossibly tall, its body a swirl of shadows that flickered like a flame before Jake's eyes. "Isabel?" Jake whispered, holding the lantern as if it were a shield. But the figure only laughed, a sound that reverberated through the entire attic, sending chills crawling up his spine. "Oh, you're mistaken, little boy," it mocked, the voice unnaturally smooth, yet dripping with malice. "Isabel is but a faint memory, a ghost of a ghost." "Who are you?" Jake shouted, trying to sound defiant despite the tremor in his voice. "I am their warden," the figure hissed, staring with hollow eyes that seemed to swallow the light whole. "And you have trespassed on grounds best left undisturbed." The darkness thickened around them, eating away at the edges of the lantern's light. The warmth Jake felt began to fade, replaced by an icy grip of despair. Jenna clutched his arm, her fingers cold and shaking. "Jake," she cried, "we have to do something." He nodded, forcing himself to focus on the lantern, trying to remember what they needed to do. The glow flickered uncertainly, casting monstrous shapes against the walls. Specters rose and fell, merging with the darkness, their faces marred with centuries of sorrow and anger. "Your journey was noble but futile," the warden continued, its voice rising to a chaotic crescendo. "You'll do nothing but join them." A surge of energy flared in Jake, igniting desperation and hope. "No," he yelled, "we won't be trapped here. Isabel, Samuel, guide us." The moment the names left his lips, something shifted. The lantern flickered fiercely, summoning forth silhouettes of children who danced in the light, laughter spilling forth like music from a forgotten world. The shadows faltered, momentarily whispering to each other in confusion. But it was short-lived. The warden's screech pierced the air, shrill and filled with rage. "You dare call them? They belong to me now." Jake tightened his grip on the lantern, willing it to grow stronger. Could it really push back this nightmare? "We're not afraid of you," he shouted, voices of the lost behind him growing louder. "We know your secrets." The warden lunged forward, a writhing mass of rage.
Jake felt a cold presence envelop him, paralyzing in its intensity. The light from the lantern dimmed as fear tried to steal his power. "Fight it!" Jenna yelled. "You have to believe!" Jake's heart raced, the warmth beneath his skin flaring up again. The lantern, it pulsed like a heartbeat. Maybe it wasn't just a beacon. Maybe it was something more. "I'm not afraid!" he bellowed, and in that moment he thrust the lantern into the encroaching shadows. Light exploded forth, piercing the darkness like a jagged blade, forcing the warden back. A howl erupted from its monstrous form, twisting in agony, but Jake didn't relent. He could feel the presence of Isabel and Samuel, could sense their strength within him. "Together!" he shouted, willing his friends to join him, their hands pulling the power of the light into a collective surge. Suddenly, the lantern blazed with radiant energy, illuminating even the deepest corners of the attic. The shadows roared, tearing at one another in a frantic retreat. But even as victory approached, Jake noticed something new. The creeping shadows amidst the walls seemed to multiply. The laughter morphed into cries of dread, echoing through the chaos. "It won't be enough, Jake," the warden sneered, claw-like hands forming around the edges of the light. "This is just a taste of the darkness that watches, waiting to consume all." The air around them crackled with tension, a nascent breath of uncertainty swelling like a storm. Jake's heart thundered. "What now?" he hissed, panic bubbling at the edge of his mind. From the far reaches of the shadow, whispers lingered, beckoning him back into the depths. Too many lost souls, too many secrets hidden in the darkness. Will we face them or run, he thought, overwhelmed by the weight of his choice. Through the panic, the unyielding question hung in the air like a blade waiting to drop. How far would they dig into the shadows to unveil the truth, and what horrors would they unearth along the way? The shadows clawed at the edges of the light, their whispers swirling like smoke around Jake and Jenna. The lantern pulsed, flickering in an eerie rhythm, as if its glow were fighting for life against the growing fear that surrounded them. Sweat dripped down Jake's forehead, blending with the cold sweat that coated his palms. "Jenna," Jake breathed, glancing at her wide eyes, "we need to find a way to—" The warden's growl interrupted him, colder than the attic's chill. "You think mere light can keep me at bay? Your friends, they are but echoes now." Their laughter faded, replaced by the mournful cries of children lost to time. Each anguished sound sliced through Jake's heart. "Isabel! Samuel!" he screamed, desperation clawing at his throat. It was pointless, he thought, panic constricting his chest. Jenna's grip tightened on Jake's arm. "What if the stories, they're right? What if there's more?" she whispered, terror in her voice. "What if we don't escape?" "No," Jake replied, resolute. "We will find a way out together. There has to be something." Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, anxious and trembling. An idea sparked in Jake's mind, lightning fast. Memories! If the warden fed on fear, perhaps they could turn it against him. They needed to remember everything they knew. "Think, Jenna," Jake urged. "Isabel told us stories. There's power in the truth. I know she talked about the children that were added to the darkness. What did she say?" The memories flickered, vivid but incomplete. The house, the creeping dread, the untold tragedies that lingered. "She said they were trapped," Jenna gasped, piecing it together. "Trapped because they lost hope. But maybe, if we can call them, summon their strength." The warden's laughter echoed, filled with scorn. "You think to summon what's been forever lost? Foolish children." Jake felt the chill of despair, but he couldn't let it take hold. "Let's call them anyway." He turned to the shadows. "Isabel, Samuel, we know you're here. You're not forgotten." The lantern flickered again, flaring bright with every name they cried out. "Come back, join us, we're fighting for you." With each shout, a shimmer of light collided with the darkness, pushing against the warden's clawing grasp. The shadows hesitated, the ghastly figures almost taking form, but wavering, as if caught between worlds. "You think your voices can oppose me?" howled the warden, surging forward, cold tendrils reaching for them. "I believe," Jake yelled defiantly, stubborn hope igniting within him. "I believe in the lost." At that moment, the attic trembled. The shadows began to stumble, their forms flickering like broken glass. Jake and Jenna pressed on, shouting the names of the lost and forgotten, invoking warmth and light. Yet, with every surge of hope, the warden retaliated, unleashing a chilling scream that echoed off the walls. The lantern's light flickered dangerously low, and shadows closed in, crawling up the sides of the lantern as if trying to snuff it out. "Stay with me," Jenna cried, and together they held the lantern higher, pooling their strength. "I'm not letting you take my friends," Jake shouted, summoning every ounce of defiance. But just when it seemed the lantern would burst forth with light powerful enough to push back the darkness, the walls of the attic began to shift, creaking ominously. Something deep within the shadows stirred, a greater threat awakening behind the confining walls. "What's happening?" Jenna gasped, eyes wide with fear. "We're awakening something," Jake realized, heart racing as panic replaced his defiance. A new shadow began to emerge, larger and darker than the warden. The air thickened, oppressive, choking off their cries. "Jake," Jenna's voice trembled, "we have to go, now." But as the darkness enveloped them, Jake felt the weight of his choice tighten around his throat. Would they flee into the unknown, or confront this ancient evil waiting to consume them all? The question echoed between them, as the shadow loomed closer, ready to strike. Would the light of the lantern be enough, or would it fade into the darkness forever? "Jake, we can't stay here."
"We have to leave now." But Jake felt something deep within the shadows, a tether pulling him back. The warden's malevolent laughter echoed, slicing through the thick air, taunting him. "You cannot escape the darkness you've awakened. All you will find is despair." "Not if we fight," Jake shouted, holding the lantern tighter, summoning the warmth that coursed through its light. "We will free those trapped here and ourselves." The shadows writhed and twisted, darkness clawing at their ankles as they backed toward the attic door. But the air thickened with an unbearable pressure, the weight of countless souls lingering in this cursed place. Jake could feel their fear, their despair, pulsing through him as the terrible figure of the warden loomed closer, a swirling tempest of ominous intent. "No," he cried, determination igniting like a flame within him. "We aren't just echoes, we can remember." In that instant, he took a deep breath and shouted, "Isabel, Samuel, we summon you. You've endured long enough." The warden shrieked in rage, shadows darting frantically, but it was too late. Light erupted from the lantern, a brilliant beacon that cut through the murky veil surrounding them. The air shimmered, the dusty attic transformed, and whispered voices began to rise. "I can feel them," Jenna gasped, her fingers entwined with Lily's. "We're not alone." The flickering light grew brighter, bathing the attic in clarity as the forms of children emerged, faces brightening with newfound hope. Each lost spirit reached for the light, stepping out from their shadows, drawn towards the warmth that spread through the attic. "Isabel, Samuel," they cried, their voices merging into a powerful choir of forgotten souls. Suddenly, the warden roared, a sound that shook the walls. "You think you're strong enough to break the chains that bind them? I will not allow it." The shadows leaped forward, a churning sea of despair clawing at Jake and his family. But the children in the light held the warden back, their faces distorted with courage and strength. Jake felt their energy, filling him, pushing them all closer to freedom.
"We're with you," Isabel's voice rang clear, cutting through the noise. "You have to take our light." Jake steeled himself, his heart racing as he faced the looming darkness. The lantern glowed like the sun in his hands, a defiance against fear itself. "Together!" he yelled, raising the lantern high. "Together!" Jenna and Lily echoed, their voices resonating with power. With a surge of defiance, they pressed toward the warden, the glow of the lantern illuminating the wicked figure, pushing it back with every ounce of light they could summon. The laughter of the warden turned into a cacophony of anguish, a howl of fury mixed with fading rage. The shadows trembled as the light surged forth, eating away at the barriers that trapped Isabel and the others. "Let them go!" Jake shouted, as names continued to flow, belief mingling.
With memories, each name feeding the steady glow, breaking the chains, shattering the stifling weight of fear. "Set us free," the children cried, their voices woven together. "Release us from this torment." The warden shrieked louder, shadows twisting erratically, desperately clinging on. But with every name spoken, the darkness wrinkled and folded, exposed to the piercing light. "You are nothing," it howled in desperation. "Not anymore." Jake refused to relent. The lantern pulsed beneath his palm, shimmering with vibrant energy. With one final surge, they poured everything they had into the light, the memories, the truth, the joy of connection. "We are here. We won't let the past consume us." They combined their voices, surrendering themselves to the collective force of every trapped soul. As the energies collided, the lantern erupted into a blinding brilliance. Shadows recoiled, shrieking madly, unable to withstand the power of the truth. The warden screeched one last time before being engulfed by the light, dissolving into nothing more than a memory. In that moment, clarity reigned. The attic shook, dust swirling in brilliant rays of light. Whispers echoed around them, a gentle wind sweeping through the room, carrying the fading cries of the lost souls, turning into joyous laughter. "Thank you," Isabel's voice broke through, resonant with gratitude. "You freed us." And just like that, the shadows faded, leaving the attic illuminated, alive with glowing warmth. The spirits danced around them, their forms shimmering, as if embracing their newfound freedom. The memories of pain and suffering began to dissolve, replaced by the hope that now filled the air. Jake, Jenna, and Lily stood together, breathless, heartbeats in sync, as they watched the souls flow into the light. "We did it," Jake breathed, hope blooming in his chest like spring after a long winter. Together, they exited the attic, stepping into the world where the weight of the past no longer loomed over them. Behind them, the shadows faded, sealing the horrors deep within the walls, where they belonged. The Peterson family looked ahead, a path of sunlight stretching out before them, rich with promise and possibility. With the burden of their fears lifted, they shared a moment of quiet understanding in the warmth of a new dawn. "We're finally free," Jenna murmured, tears glistening in her eyes, a mixture of relief and newfound determination. "Yes," Jake agreed, his voice tinged with wonder. "We can start again, this time together." And as they walked forward hand in hand, they could finally leave behind the haunting whispers of the past. Now's the time to act. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.